Welcome to Trump Breaking News Network, your daily source for up-to-date news on the political scene of Donald Trump, his presidency, American politics and conspiracies. Please subscribe to receive notice of our daily updates. Also share with your friends and your social media. We encourage you to like our videos and give your comments.
This is TBNN.
Trump executive order targets deep state and opens door to full disclosure. Something very profound happened in the U.S. on December 21 with the passage of President Donald Trump's executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. The order declared a state of national emergency concerning human rights and corruption, and named specific individuals and organizations that would have their bank accounts and assets frozen regardless of where in the world the abuses had occurred. While the mainstream media has largely ignored Trump's executive order, the alternative media has been paying close attention. Many have noted the executive order is far more significant than what it appears to be on the surface. Rather than just freezing the financial resources of foreign citizens linked to the Russian sphere of influence, as it superficially appears to do, it is really targeted at members of the deep state, aka Cabal or Illuminati, that have been involved in human trafficking, pedophilia and systemic corruption all over the planet. The language of the executive order is very open-ended in terms of how international corruption and human rights abuses threaten U.S. national security. I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source, in whole or in substantial part, outside the United States, such as those committed or directed by persons listed in the annex to this order, have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. The United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences on those who commit serious human rights abuse or engage in corruption, as well as to protect the financial system of the United States from abuse by these same persons. I therefore determined that serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States, and I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. Its annex identifies key individuals and organizations, several of whom are clearly associated with Russia. The executive order is linked to the global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act that emerged from the murder of a prominent dissident exposing human rights abuses and corruption in Russia. This linkage can easily lead readers into falsely believing that the executive order is solely intended to target corrupt Russian officials, and corruption and human rights abuses by countries in Russia's sphere of influence. Yet, as a number of alternative media sources point out, Trump's executive order goes well beyond the Russian sphere of influence. It is really targeting the deep state, and fulfilling his 2016 campaign pledge to drain the swamp. For example, Jim Stone, a freelance journalist, writes, "The executive order is presented as a national emergency up front, right in the beginning. At first it reads like he's going after foreigners which are named directly in an annex at the end. That's not what this is. The first part of the order only cements the second part of the order, to prevent American criminals from running away to foreign countries and being supported by foreigners. To sum this up, no swamp critter can accept help from another swamp critter in getting away. Child traffickers and other human rights abuses are covered, the stealing of and misuse of government funds is covered, all items are covered for foreigners and U.S. citizens. Any foreigners who have assets in the U.S. that have done anything against the U.S. for the purpose of supporting the American swamp will have those assets seized. Anyone in violation of anything in this executive order will have their assets seized." An anonymous whistleblower using the pseudonym Meganon says that the executive order has led to many powerful members of the deep state waking up with no financial resources. Guess what? The swamp's financials froze over while they all slept last night, y'all. It's gonna be a Christmas break for them. They were all broke before sunrise. This covers kids, humans, drugs, arms, guns, WMD'/chemicals/uranium, organs, etc. Now if you want to know who in our swamp woke up with frozen accounts, foundations, charities, side businesses and shell orgs/LLCs, etc. Dig into the annex list. The executive order and the language it uses really does mark a momentous event. Quite simply, it marks a transfer of political power from the deep state to the U.S. military in terms of who is really in control of the U.S. Republic. It's no secret that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with senior military officers who share his desire to drain the swamp. His chief of staff, John Kelly, is a retired four-star USMC general. His Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, is also a retired four-star USMC general. His National Security Advisor, James McMaster, is an active-duty three-star U.S. Army general. His head of the National Security Agency, Mike Rogers, is an active-duty four-star Navy admiral. The head of the Secret Service, Randolph Ailes, is a retired two-star Marine general, and the list goes on. The role of Admiral Mike Rogers is particularly significant since he broke ranks with the U.S. intelligence community back in late 2016 to warn Trump about a deep state effort to undermine and even prevent him from coming into power by spying on his transition team. While Trump was president-elect, Rogers traveled to Trump Tower on November 17, 2016 to warn him of the deep state plans. The next day, The Washington Post reported on a recommendation by the intelligence community and Pentagon in October 2016 to sack Rogers. President Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and the Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, reportedly were dissatisfied with Rogers' performance, including his visit to Trump. In a move apparently unprecedented for a military officer, Rogers, without notifying superiors, traveled to New York to meet with Trump on Thursday at Trump Tower. That caused consternation at senior levels of the administration, according to the officials, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal personnel matters. CIA Director John Brennan was a key player in the effort to remove Rogers, as illustrated by the Washington Post story, which is the traditional official news outlet promoting CIA interests. To his credit, President Obama did not take action against Rogers. Now, more than a year after these backstage maneuverings, Rogers remains at the helm of the NSA, closely monitoring the global activities of the deep state and advising Trump and his national security team. This has been especially significant when it came to the Central Intelligence Agency, which has long been the key U.S. institution in funding and enforcing the will of the deep state. In particular, the CIA's clandestine services and counterintelligence divisions were instrumental in creating an unofficial black budget for funding highly classified projects and operations ever since the CIA's creation in 1947. These two branches of the CIA have long been the secret enforcers of deep state, as best illustrated in the Kennedy assassination. James Jesus Angleton, chief of the CIA's counterintelligence office, played a direct role, while Richard Helms, deputy director of plans, provided covert support for the operation. Trump's elevation of former Congressman, Mike Pompeo, to become CIA director was intended to bring the CIA under direct presidential authority. Pompeo was, however, effectively sidelined from exercising any real power over the CIA's covert operations. It was Pompeo's more balanced approach to U.S.-Russia relations that earned him the enmity of shadowy CIA groups. The situation dramatically changed on Saturday, November 18, when a number of USMC helicopters flew over the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia. A former FBI agent, Hal Turner, confirmed through credible sources that the helicopters had buzzed the CIA HQ for roughly 30 minutes. The intent was clear: the USMC was threatening the CIA's clandestine services division to get on board with the Trump administration or else. This is not the first time that the CIA has been intimidated by a U.S. president threatening to unleash the U.S. military against it. In 1958, President Eisenhower threatened the CIA's Area 51 facilities in Nevada with invasion by the U.S. First Army stationed at Colorado if the CIA did not fully disclose all its classified programs there. In a May 2013 video interview, a former CIA operative revealed what he heard Eisenhower tell his boss to relay to the mysterious MJ-12 committee in charge of the Area 51 facility, for which the CIA provided operational security. The clearest sign that the CIA is now firmly under Trump's control is President Putin thanking President Trump and Pompeo for thwarting a planned terrorist attack against a prominent St. Petersburg cathedral. A December 17 Kremlin press release stated, Vladimir Putin thanked Donald Trump for the information passed on by the United States Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, that helped detain the terrorists who plotted to set off explosions at Kazan Cathedral in St. Petersburg and other public places in the city. The information received from the CIA was enough to locate and detain the criminals. The Russian president asked the U.S. president to convey his appreciation to the Central Intelligence Agency director and the operatives of U.S. intelligence services who received this information. It is unprecedented for a Russian head of state to publicly thank the CIA. The underlying message was clear: the CIA was now under the control of white hats in the U.S. national security system, and Putin was very grateful. What we are witnessing with Trump's December 21 executive order is the final act of a well-thought-out plan to sideline the deep state, drain the swamp, and reinstate direct presidential authority over the U.S. national security system. Effectively, we are witnessing a handover of real power from the deep state to the U.S. military via Donald Trump as Commander-in-Chief. What is particularly noteworthy in the executive order is that this transfer of power is being done quietly behind the scenes with little mainstream attention. Key figures in the deep state are finding their global financial resources frozen, and are being secretly detained via sealed indictments that now have worldwide impact due to Trump's executive order. By late November, there were over 4,000 sealed federal indictments being tracked by alternative news journalists such as Hal Turner. Many of these are being enforced by Special Operations Command personnel that are going around the planet arresting key deep state figures. All this leads to the question, what does all this mean for a 7 decades-long suppression of the truth regarding extraterrestrial life and technology, the existence of a breakaway German colony in Antarctica, and the existence of multiple secret space programs? The way in which the executive order has been crafted for a specific target, and quietly enforced, is that the U.S. military is wanting to keep much of what is occurring off the public radar. The primary reason for doing so is clearly to minimize disruption to the U.S. political system while the transfer of power takes place. Once the transfer process is complete, we can expect some of the sealed indictments being publicly revealed, and Trump publicly declaring victory in his effort to drain the swamp. We can expect a lot of unexpected retirements by indicted individuals who are currently making plea deals to escape imprisonment. Individuals involved in the most egregious human rights abuses such as child trafficking, will very likely be publicly exposed and tried. As the transfer of power process moves forward, we can expect that more of the truth about secret space programs, Antarctica and extraterrestrial life will be disclosed. Based on how the U.S. military is dealing with key figures from the deep state, it can be predicted that disclosure will take place in a gradual manner that does not disrupt the social fabric of U.S. and stability of the global community. Disclosure is inevitable, but with the U.S. military now increasingly in charge of the American end of the process, disclosure is likely to happen in a series of gradual steps that culminate in sweeping changes all across the planet as advanced technologies involving zero-point energy, anti-gravity propulsion and holographic healing are strategically released. While removal of the deep state and its corrosive global influence through human rights abuses and corruption is a welcome development, the outsized behind-the-scenes influence of the U.S. military in the Trump administration is a cause for concern in the long term. Predictably, disclosures that will occur throughout the remainder of the Trump administration will promote U.S. national security interests largely defined through a military mindset. President Eisenhower's greatest lament over the way classified projects involving advanced technologies were being managed in the U.S. was that excessive secrecy cut out the best people from the decision-making process. Only full disclosure will prevent a similar problem from arising in the future where a new deep state emerges, one dominated by military interests, with control over advanced technologies, which it uses to dominate the rest of humanity. Full disclosure is essential for humanity transitioning from an insular planet dominated either by criminal syndicates or a military mindset, into a more informed peaceful planetary society worthy of becoming a full member of a galactic community.
This has been the Trump Breaking News Network. Please subscribe and share to stay up to date on the latest news about our president. Be informed.